So for the longest time, I've been using Psyscope to monitor my kick and bass, but that might change. There's a new plugin on the market that I want to take a look at today. It's called Ninja, and there's a code available in the description if you want to check it out for yourself. So what do I mean by monitoring my kick and bass? Well, in this case, it's not about the actual monitors that I have that you use to listen to your kick and bass, but I mean just looking at what the kick and bass is doing. As you can see here, we have a waveform. You can see we have another waveform for the kick over here. And I can just look at what the kick and bass is doing. I can also look at both layers together, or to the summing of both elements together. So now let's have a look at Ninja, which I've also put on this Psyscope track over here. And you can see with the way that we have set it up, it is just showing us the kick. The reason for that is when it comes to this setup over here, what is actually happening in the Psyscope group here is that the kick is coming into this channel over here, and that is directly going into this group over here. But all three others are actually going into individual sidechain inputs of Psyscope. This is what allows us to differentiate between the different layers that we have over here. Ninja does not have this. It doesn't allow you to look at multiple signals at the same time by just inputting them into their sidechain. In fact, it doesn't have a sidechain input. Now this is particularly annoying for me because I don't use a kick and bass group. A lot of sidetrans producers will use a kick and bass group, so you can just put it on there and you can have a look at your kick and bass together going through the group. But the first place where my kick and bass combine is actually in my master chain. So let's have a look at my master chain instead. And now we see the second problem. Because of the routing that I have set up and because some of the plugins in my production do introduce a little bit of latency, the waveform isn't properly aligned to the grid here. Now this is something that I could try to fix. Maybe I could introduce some more latency so that it wraps around exactly up until this point of the grid here, basically introducing one beat of delay into the signal. But to be honest, this isn't too big of a problem. Now as you can see, there's two different waveforms that we're looking at here, and this is where one of the unique features of Ninja is coming out. As you can see, this waveform is a little bit smoothed out. You can see we don't have any transients, we don't have any of these spikes that sit in the kick, and that's because there's a low pass being applied to this waveform over here. So you can just look at the lower frequencies of your kick and bass. Now this is really useful, this is really powerful. It allows you to specifically for the sub-frequencies of your track, look at what is happening in there. One other example of where this is very useful is if you have other elements that may be competing with the kick and bass, you can actually see them in the waveform. So just as an example, here I found a synth that has a lot of lower frequencies. Normally I'm filtering that out, but let's say that I don't. You get that nice big spike in there in the lower frequencies, which obviously is going to clash with our kick and bass. We can now use Ninja to check if there's any issues with our waveform. And you can immediately see that it's a lot more variable, it's a lot more changing. So overall, that is telling us that there's something wrong with the lower frequencies of our mix. For reference, this is what it's supposed to look like. Note that each of the bass notes and each of the kicks has their own unique little pockets that they can exist in and that they can play. Now there might be a little bit of a problem with this, we'll later verify if this is actually the case, but what is happening is that with these lower frequencies, the filter that is being used actually introduces a phase shift in those frequencies. So you can see if I move this around, that you can see the waveform kind of moving left to right. This is due to the phase shift caused by filters. And that means that what you're actually seeing here isn't technically what is happening to the lower frequencies of the kick and bass. In fact, if we zoom in by holding Control and scrolling down, you can see that these two peaks don't line up. As you can see over here, it's going up, whereas over here, it is later going up, basically. It's shifted backwards. And you can see that the more I move this frequency around, the more that it gets shifted. Now you could do this with linear phase, but I don't think that you would want that kind of latency coming from a monitoring plugin. So I think this is the best way to do it. Just keep that in mind that this exists and that this can cause you to make certain decisions based on a waveform that isn't actually a full representation of your lower frequencies. As I said before, later we'll do a little test to see if this is actually a problem. First, I do want to point out some other cool features of Ninja. One of them is this show wave info over here. This allows you to zoom into the waveform and it allows you to see the exact key of all of the different cycles here. There's also a warning So if you want to see if a particular frequency is present in a particular area, you can just do it like this, and it will show you exactly which cycles fall under that frequency. The final thing that I want to point out is that there's different options for the source here. You can look at the left channel, you can look at the right channel, you can look at the mid channel, and you can look at the side channel. And in this case, you can see that there's a little bit of information in the stereo field below or around the selected frequency here. Just turning off warning so that it's easier to see. And we can zoom in a little bit and we can see parts of the bassline still existing in the stereo field. The final thing that I want to say is that there's tooltips down below here, and the reason why I'm pointing that out is because I just noticed that it says Alt plus scroll to move. So I'm assuming that that could be very useful for lining up the waveform when you're dealing with latency. Now currently it isn't working for me. One of the reasons could be because this is an early access version of the plugin, and as you can see there is an update available here. So this will probably be already fixed when the plugin comes out for release. Now the next part of the video is going to be a little bit technical, but I actually want to experiment to see if that filter that is used to just show the low frequencies actually matters. The reason for that is a little bit abstract and a little bit technical, but I'll try to simplify it as much as possible. Here, as you can see, we have two MIDI clips. One instance where Serum is just triggering a basic sine wave, and then we have another instance of Serum right here, triggering also a sine wave, but this time there's a pitch envelope on the patch. So we can get this normal sine wave over here, as you can see in dark green here, and we can also get a pitched version of that. What I've done is I've aligned them towards the end of the clip here. So if I play them both together, you'll see that they'll start off with different phases, but they'll end up with the same phase alignment. Just note that as you can see here, they're different, and as this pitching sine wave is coming down in pitch and getting to the same pitch as the other sine wave, it actually aligns with that other sine wave. Now what these two sine waves emulate are the kick and the bass of our track. You can imagine the normal sine wave without any pitch movement being the baseline of our track, while the kick with a lot of pitch movement, which is what essentially a kick is, it's a sine wave with a pitch envelope on it, is being represented obviously by the pitching sine wave over here. Now what I want to try to see is if applying the same filter to a pitching sine wave as well as a normal sine wave will still keep them in phase. Because if they are still in phase, then the filter doesn't matter. They will still show the same phase representation. So if a kick and bass is phase aligned properly, a filtered kick and bass will also be phase aligned properly. But if they're not aligned, that means that the filter is causing a disalignment between the kick and the bass when you're actually looking at it inside of an oscilloscope. Now I'm using Psyscope here again just because of its functionality of having multiple layers as inputs, so I can look at multiple waveforms layered on top of each other. But we're of course talking about the filter capability that sits inside of SubNinja. Anyway, let's apply our filter. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use a high-pass filter here from Autofilter. Just like this, I'm going to set it to its lowest possible setting. I'm going to give it a bit of resonance to introduce a little bit of extra phase shift. And I'm just going to copy that over to this track over here as well. Now, I'm expecting these to still line up from everything that I know, but I might be wrong about this. There might be some kind of weird interaction between the pitching and the phase shift that is causing it, that may make it so that these two sine waves are out of phase. Luckily for us, they are not out of phase, which means that you can still use SubNinja for your phase alignment. What I would not use it for is cleanliness checking though, because it is still extending and delaying those frequencies, and for checking the cleanliness of your kick and bass, it is probably better to use the full waveform as opposed to the filtered one. This does mean that you need to be able to solo the kick and bass in your project, and you cannot do this, for example, on the mastered. Now overall, I would say SubNinja is amazing in terms of what it can do. I do think that filtering the waveform has some clear benefits and that you can monitor for extra sub-frequencies sitting in that area. There's not a very easy way to use Psyscope to do that, especially if you're looking at the full mix or full master. There are some drawbacks to the plugin, but I think that with a few updates those can be fixed. I don't see any major design issues or something like that cause this plugin to not work for its intended purpose. And overall, in terms of ease of use and controls, it is just very nice to work with. So that's my review of SubNinja. If you enjoyed this plugin or if you want to try it out for yourself, there's a discount link in the description. But that's going to be everything for today. I hope you enjoyed and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.